Welcome to Real Chat with Kat, the podcast that's all about real conversations for real transformation. I'm your host, Kat Polsinelli, professional speaker, MC, and best-selling international author. Here, we tackle the tough stuff, the mud that we all have found ourselves in. We talk about the pivots, the challenges, and the victories that shape our lives and our businesses. From overcoming trauma and finding your voice to navigating life's unexpected twists, we get raw, honest, and open. You'll hear from inspiring guests who share their stories of resilience, healing, and growth. Whether it's breaking through emotional abuse, embracing self-worth, or thriving in entrepreneurship, you'll find connection, empowerment, and the tools to keep you moving forward. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and get ready for stories that hit home and conversations that make a difference. Let's get real together. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of Real Chat with Kat. I am so excited to have you here with me today, and I have a wonderful guest with so much to celebrate as well, but I'm super excited to have this conversation. I think that what you do, and we've talked about this, is extremely unique in the way that you handle conversations with addictions and things like that. But on the other side of it, which to me is like, well, duh, of course we need that. I never would have thought about that. So I'm super excited to dive into this because I also think that there are going to be other pieces and components that are going to overlap in other people's lives, even if they're not dealing with someone that is dealing with addiction. And so anyway, we'll kind of dive into that. Lisa, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. We're gonna go. I'm gonna do my best not to squirrel. Anyway, you guys know how it goes. I always go down a rabbit hole. So Lisa, do us all a favor then. Tell everybody who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah, sure. My name is Lisa Katona Smith, and I am a family consultant. I work with families who love someone struggling with substance use and or mental health challenges. And I really take the role of supporting the family to start systemic change, to ideally be able to invite their loved one to get some help if they need, and also sustain the journey, which is really can be long and hard sometimes.
I love this. And I love that, like I said, I know we talked about this before, that you are working with the families to make sure that they're supported as well. I do feel like, right, we definitely want to help those that are asking for help or are needing that help and stuff. And for your family, for people that are wanting to be involved, who want to make sure that you get the help, who want to stay by your side, that is a lot of struggle. That is a lot of mental load. That is a lot of emotional load. That's a lot of things to go through. And I know that in all of those intricacies as well, it's also fighting your own boundaries and making sure that you're not just giving to that person everything that they need, where you end up becoming an enabler. Like, where is the boundary line? So what got you into this to begin with? Like, how did you decide like families need this help just as much as the other side?
Yeah. I was a family, and I needed help. So, it really just kind of I answered a question that was not being answered. So in my own life's journey, my oldest son has struggled with mental health and substance use, and over the course of us navigating, helping him, and just living that challenge. It became very clear to me that what was being offered to families was not
Mm,
helping my son, not helping us. There was either like step out of it, get out of the way, or you know, judgment and shame. And
yeah.
really there's a middle ground, which is, it's easy to find the magic bullet, the magic answer. There isn't one though. And it's really hard to tell a mom to step out of loving their child. And it's inviting them into actually how can you be helpful and how can you navigate this in a way that's not going to take you down as well. So I like
Mm,
to tell people that I kind of became who I needed when I couldn't find me. And to this day, I just kind of scream from the mountaintops that families need to be included in this process and they need to be invited and expected to be a part of the solution, because they become a part of the problem, not because they mean to, but because they don't know another way. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, families don't go to treatment or support with their loved one, even though that would be ideal. But there just isn't capacity for that to happen. So I've created a process and a system and a structure to be able to help families navigate this. I call it sharing the burden of change and really, modeling the way forward.
I love that. Oh, sharing the burden of change. That is a really neat perspective to bring that in. And I think about it from like a mom's point of view as well, of all the things that I've kind of gotten myself into with my kids and the things that they are going through and the things that they have struggled with. And I completely agree with you. I don't think that there is any possibility that if my son was dealing with substance abuse or anything like that, that someone could say, you know what, just leave him alone, back off, he's going to figure it out. Like, there's no way that I can do that. I'm curious from your perspective as well. Do you feel like there's a different level of burden when it comes to like parents and with their child versus like maybe someone with a spouse? Do you see that there's a little level of difficulty that's maybe a little bit different? Because I feel like as a parent, um, there's an obligation there as
Yeah.
well of
Mhm.
like, I raised him, he's become this way because of me in some way or fashion. I hope that people are able to differentiate that, but I know that there was a really good chunk of me for a while when my oldest one was going through some stuff that I put everything back on me. Well, because of what he went through, because of what he saw, because of this, because of that, like this is basically my fault. And I think I wanted to help so much because of that. I ended up hurting versus
Yeah.
actually being able to help.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So obviously parents can't choose to not be a parent. They're a parent, and partners can choose to not be a partner. But I think I've worked with many partners who beautifully navigated not being together as partners anymore, but maybe co-parenting healthfully to the child that remains in their relationship. Um, so there's a unique perspective from a partner side that, you can make a decision that I'm not going to keep doing life with this person. Whereas a
Hmm.
parent, even if plenty of parents say I'm done, but they're not done. Like they're
Yeah.
just in it. So the truth is parents can't permanently step away. It's pretty hard emotionally to do that. So it's unique, but I think ultimately, even for partners that don't want to be in this partnership anymore with a person who's struggling, unless they just don't have kids, are going to cut ties. Even if they don't have kids, though, it's about compassion for a human experience, and you don't have to destroy somebody else in the process of getting healthy. um
Mm,
so I think, this system and process and structure of thinking and living differently and engaging differently with someone who's having a hard time in their life, um, ultimately allows you to show up in alignment with who you are as a person, a whole lot better. So whether you're a parent or a partner, um, some of the challenges are a little bit different, and one might have quote unquote easier ways of stepping back. But it in the end, it's not easy. And it's about sustainability of you and connection, however much or little you want in that relationship with the person. And those are the things that we know through science are effective to helping people make changes.
definitely. And I do think that I agree with you, compassion for another human being is huge. And I definitely think that that is sometimes something what gets us kind of caught up in
Mhm.
more, taking off more than we can chew kind of a scenario. And at the same time, I also think that having to go through this process alone would make it 10 times harder. And I'd love to get your feedback on maybe things that you have seen, from people that you've helped, because I think about, my abuse and the things that I went through, like my relationship. And I remember trying to deal with it and fight with it on my own and not being able to talk about it. And there was a lot more of a roller coaster than like now, where I can speak to my husband, I can tell him some of the things, we can kind of chat about it, and I feel like I can kind of open up and be able to work through it. It's really interesting, the difference that that makes. So I'm curious to know, for you, what you've kind of seen as well.
Yeah, I mean, common humanity is a positive thing. Like being with others who are also navigating hard things or can help guide you in that hard thing is essential. Otherwise, we get in our own heads and we start having our own conversations with ourselves around responsibility. And you said something at the beginning of that statement that was really important that you know, trying to engage with someone in a with compassionate humanity um,
Hmm.
can get maybe overtaken by the need to fix. And
Mm,
compassion is not the need to fix. Compassion is not the need to solution. Compassion really, and empathy is really being able to witness somebody else's experience and sit with them in it, or for your own personal safety when it comes to abuse, finding enough space for your protection so that you can still witness somebody else's experience, human experience, as difficult and have it not impact you. So, I think parents and anybody affected by someone who isn't doing well in their life, and particularly when they're engaging in dangerous, scary behavior, um, it's hard to just witness and not fix. And
mhm,
that's not actually compassionate. It's taking away somebody else's agency and empowerment. And, the word enabling has, I think you said it actually earlier. It's not a word that I use. But I do explain to people that, if you aren't choosing to empower your loved one, you might be doing the other E word, which is enabling, which is essentially taking away someone's power to do better for themselves. So I think, I don't know if I answered your question exactly, but I definitely wanted to touch on kind of the over compassion mindset. People
yeah.
really excuse overdone compassion as love, and finding the balance is the key, the sweet spot.
I love that. And I love that you said, compassion doesn't mean that you have to fix it. And I think one of the very first thing that like popped in my brain as you were talking about this was when we think of like over compassionate, to the point to where we are, like you said, kind of taking away somebody else's agency or the ability to heal in a way that's best for them. I'm curious your take because this popped in my brain. My thought is, while at the surface, we really want to help that person, there's also another thing, whether it's in the back of your brain or whatever, it's not malicious, but it's, if I can fix it, then that means that I am better, or that I can let go of the shame or the guilt or whatever it is that I'm holding on. So in reality, when you're overextending, you think that you are helping that person, but what you're also trying to do is help fix
Mhm.
whatever you are attached to with it that is causing that shame or that guilt or something that's latched on. I'm curious to know your
Yes.
thoughts on that.
Yes. Over compassion, let's just call it that, passionately overdoing it, really is, and thank you for bringing that up. This is a hard statement, right? It's about you. Like what you're doing, what you're overdoing, is about your discomfort. And when we rob somebody else of the chance to do better, we're robbing them of that for our self-esteem or for our well-being. Like I'm uncomfortable watching what's happening or seeing the discomfort that my person is doing or engaging in or feeling, and I want to feel better. Like when we're quiet by ourselves, that question is hard to answer because of course people are going to be defensive and say, no, 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 it's about them, because clearly they're not okay. And yes, it's clear to everybody that they're not okay. And ultimately they're not uncomfortable enough yet for this not okayness to change
Hmm.
or they don't have the skill set to change it. So how can you get comfortable with their discomfort so that you don't rob their opportunity for yourself?
The discomfort word.
Oh,
Oh, this is, I thank you for bringing this up too, and elaborating on this because I was like, I feel like I've heard this before. And so when I was thinking of it too, I think what came up was I've heard so many different people that I follow online that talk about, when somebody is grieving and we're like, oh, I'm so sorry, but they're in a better place.
mm,
We think that, right, we're coming from a place of compassion and wanting to help, but ultimately what you are doing is you're trying to make yourself more comfortable in that situation. So I love that. So just heads up to everyone that's listening, like when you feel the need to jump the gun, to feel like you have to fix it, to feel like you have to say something to shift the mood, understand or take that extra couple of seconds to realize that while in the front of your brain you feel like you might be helping, ultimately what you are really doing is you're trying to fix the way you feel. And that ultimately in any situation is not going to help anyone but you. And so you still aren't solving the problem like you think that you are. And I think this is really interesting because it means that we have to take a moment to reflect on why we are saying what we are saying or why we are trying to do what we are doing because we're so focused and taught to think in the front of the brain in like the logic only space. We're like, okay, I'm trying to help them logically because, but ultimately there's a lot of feeling that's attached to that that we aren't taught to make the connection. And I have found this really interesting, especially having conversations with my kids now about some of the things that I went through and having to really see it for what it was, but then also validate the way that they saw it when they were growing up. And that's really, really hard to do is to validate somebody's experience, especially if you are somehow involved in it and not want to correct them or fix
write it.
it or right, put your perspective. No, 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 that's not what really happened. It gets really difficult to just sit there and honestly shut up
Yeah.
and let someone kind of speak their truth and be okay with hearing that without feeling like you need to twist it
Mhm.
to make them see your side.
Yeah, I call it being a compassionate witness to somebody's experience and understanding what somebody's experiencing or witnessing somebody's experience doesn't mean that you have to agree with it. Like you might have a different lens at that situation, right? And or you might feel like, the way they experienced something wasn't your intention. But witnessing the actual impact of whatever it is that they're going through is such a gift to be able to offer somebody. And, I just think as a society and a human race, we aren't taught how to do that. And when fear is underneath all of this, with like my person is doing something dangerous and scary, that could just do a whole lot of damage or even cause death, it's hard to just witness. But that is ultimately where your power is. When you can witness somebody's experience, you can then invite them to see something else or to want something else or to move to something else. But
Mhm.
they have to be seen first.
Oh, 100%. And I think that this right here and like that piece of advice goes well beyond like dealing with someone with addiction or mental issue. Like this is something, like you said, we're not taught. So like, please make sure that you guys are paying attention to this because you can use this in everyday life, in every conversation that you're having. So my question to you then is, because we are not taught these skills, what are some of your ways to help people start being able to see that and be a witness
Mhm.
to someone's discomfort or something that they're going through versus what we're so used to being able to do?
Yeah. I mean, I think a base thing, I'll say a sentence or a phrase first and then kind of explain it, which is listen to understand rather than to respond. And if we think about when we talk to people and it's conversational and we go back and forth, we're formulating responses in our head. And in order to understand somebody, we need to not be formulating responses or taking what they're saying and going down a path that we want to go or a direction we want to take things. I like to I actually have in front of me right now. I like to keep paper in front of me when I'm having those important conversations with people, so that I can write down keywords or things that I want to reference back to, but then really be able to be present in the whole listening exchange and like fully present. And I think, again, if you're sitting in front of somebody who's behaving in a way that's scary to you, it's hard not to be looking for that response, the buts.
Yep.
And when we are listening for a response rather than to understand, we can't take sort of that 10,000 foot listening um, view, and we just start looking for like one grasshopper in the field, and we miss the infestation. We miss the actual problem. We're like, well, it's this. And honestly, it's interesting, and I'm going to go back to sort of my really zone of genius and lane of genius, which is mental health and substance use. Dangerous behaviors, like dangerous things come out of that. And if we're talking about the dangerous thing all the time, we're missing what that scary thing is masking. There's something else going on
Mm,
that is being masked by the use of alcohol or drugs, or by the self-harm, or by the isolation, or by the anger management. Something else is going on.
yeah.
And I want, as I'm saying that, Kat, I want to honor, your story and your journey too, and knowing that there are probably a lot of people listening that have been or are in abusive relationships, and especially, well, even in parent-child relationships, abuse is not okay. Like boundaries
Yeah.
of abuse is an absolute that needs to happen. So being a compassionate witness doesn't mean being an acceptor of unacceptable behaviors. You can
Mm,
compassionately witness somebody else and train them how to behave in your presence because they want that. They want that connection, and you can, it's not always the fast road, but sometimes it's a slow road to train them how, when this conversation de-escalates, I'm happy to re-enter it so that they know if you want a listener, I'm here for it. I'm also not going to be screamed at.
yeah.
So I went off a little bit, but as I was talking, I heard myself in your head, and I wanted to honor that. I wanted
I appreciate it. No, I think that that's a
to,
wonderful thing because when I think about my situation, my ex did that. It was always pills or it was something, and I didn't know how to do any of that, right? So you're right. It became those screaming matches.
yeah,
So I get it. And again, like you were saying, when you find someone that you care about that is in kind of a dangerous situation or is doing dangerous things, and there's a potential for harm that could be outside of just them, it's really hard to stand in that and be strong and honor you without feeling like you need to do something else.
right. Sustainability and connection. You can't have sustainability without that connection. And you can't have connection without that sustainability. That piece needs to happen first. And I think, one of the things that the older models or the traditional models, the popular models of family support is to step out of the situation, detach with love, which that's a phrase that I really bothers me. Because detachment isn't love.
Mhm.
Intentional space can be love for self and ultimately love for them. But detachment is, I'm done, right? I mean, that's just kind of quitting. And actually think we're stronger than that. I don't think we need to do that. So the traditional models say to loved ones, family systems, step back, get out of this situation. It's harming you, it's harming them. It's like it's a bad situation. And there's some value in that. I say, hang on a second, move over and go back in a different door. Yes, you have to leave, like maybe not physically leave, but leave the emotional entanglement so that you can
Mhm.
see clarity, so that you have that 10,000 foot view, so that you can listen to understand. You can hear what's underneath the very loud screaming behaviors and hear the problem that's trying to be solved, and then go in a different door with different tools. So you do have to step back in order to move over. But I encourage people that you can step forward. We're losing too many people. Too many people are like dying, believing that they are the disorder that they have, their solution to the problem that they have. And they're dying alone and they don't need to. First of all, there's impact, there's action that can happen if family members engage. And secondly, those people's human experience, challenging or not, can be honored as seen and important, that that somebody else is witnessing the hard things that they're going through.
Mm. Oh, I love that. I have never heard that. Detach with love. That as soon as you said, I was like, oh,
I
oh,
know.
it's
Okay.
like, and I do get it.
Yeah, it gives people
I
permission, right, to step back.
yeah,
You know,
I I agree with you. I do think that boundaries are a big important thing. I think that that's another thing that we as a society are not necessarily taught, or we don't understand what boundaries actually mean.
yes.
That's that's the other thing. So, can you go into that to help people understand for people that might be in a situation like this? What does boundaries mean? What does it mean to set the boundary where you can still provide love and feel like you're there for that person, but also be protective of yourself?
Yeah. So boundaries are a place where I can love you and me at the same time, not just you and not just me. Detached with love is love me. Um, Doormat is only loving you, right? So I need to be able to love both people. So a boundary is a safety fence around you to protect. I like to use an 8 dimensions of wellness model, not just like the obvious ones like money or safe physical safety,
Hmm.
but like emotional safety and environmental safety, your engagement in spiritual wellness, safety, like all of the dimensions of how you are a wonderful person. Um, it's putting safety fences around those things so that you can be as full as you possibly can be in this difficult circumstance and show up the best you can. So, for example, well, that's step one. Step two is understanding that boundaries, while the goal would be to invite somebody to show up differently with you, the goal is not to manipulate them to change their behavior. The goal
Mm.
is to say, hey, look, what you're doing or saying in my presence, in my one of my dimensions of wellness, is really challenging me right now. And I'm not able to be my whole self. So I'm going to put some follow through. And if this happens, I'm going to remove myself from this. Let me give you an example, kind of a simple example. When my son was struggling kind of at his highest, I was a classroom teacher. Taught school. And if you even kind of know about school, you know that teachers can't just like answer phone calls in the middle of the day. Like that's not a thing. I would have 50 kids
Yeah.
to me at any given time. And you've got 20 minutes to eat and go to the bathroom. So um, like during the day, that's it. That's all you got. So there's no phone calls. And I my phone would be blowing up, whether it was my son or my husband going, we need to talk, or, just all of it. It was just the chaos was just entering into my space. And I would put my phone on block. And I told everybody, I just said, I can't take calls during the day. It's too hard for me. It pulls my head. And like my watch is attached to my phone, so it would buzz.
Hmm.
I can't take the actual calls. Two, every time I know that there's something waiting for me, my head isn't where I need it to be, which, by the way, this was one of my dimensions of wellness, and it was really important to me. My career and my job and the way that I did it was really important to me. So I said, I'm not going to have my phone on at all until after I leave work, like literally pull out of the parking lot because I need my energy space to go in this direction.
Hmm.
And I had to do my own self-talk around if this is a 911 call, I shouldn't be being called because I'm not 911. There
Sure.
is 911 and it's not me. I can't do anything about that. And so it trained people. Well, first of all, it was my follow through. I turned my phone off. That didn't mean they didn't still text me or call me, just meant I didn't answer.
Hmm.
They learned that I was not available, and they started to adhere to the timelines that I put in place. Here's when I can be present. And that's a true statement of, I want to be able to love you, but when I'm in between classes with a 3-minute passing period, I can't really love you. And I'm
Yeah.
stressed out and like dishonoring myself for the next 45. So, here's when I can honor you and also be present, and also take care of myself. So that's an example of a boundary. I say this phrase all the time, you got to find your hamburger. I worked with a family who they really struggled with boundaries, and they had a very unsafe person living in their home. And they just were like, oh, I can't set boundaries, can't kick him out. And I'm like, well, you don't have to kick him out. Let's just start with something. I was like, how about
Yeah.
dinner? Everyone has to let me know by 3 o'clock when if you're going to be home for dinner. If you're not going to be home, or if you don't tell me, I'm going to make dinner for the people who told me. And so that's the follow through. Notice I'm not going to lecture you later or any of that other stuff. I'm just not going to have a hamburger for you. And the mom was like, well, it's not a big deal. I'll just make more hamburgers. And I said, no, it's not a big deal. But the big deal is you need to train people how you can love them best, how you can show up your whole awesome self. And you can't do it when you're resentful. So it took one day and it was a hamburger. And he came home and was upset because he didn't have one and threw a chair and all of the kind of stuff. Also, by the way, there was a pantry full of food. It's not like he was starving. And she said, oh gosh, maybe tomorrow, if you let me know by 3, I'll make sure to make enough dinner for you too. He let her know by 3 the next day. I mean, it's just training people like, this is how I can love you.
Yeah.
It's like this. So again, if your boundary is, I got a little off on a tangent there because there's so much. And I agree with you, Kat. It's become a pop psych term. I've got a boundary. And I'm like,
Yep.
actually, just you have a rule and you're still upset. So it's not working for you. A boundary actually should make you go, whew, all right, all I need to do is hang up the phone because I've already made the statement.
Yep.
All I need to do is step out of this conversation because I'm not okay with how it's going. All I need to do is say, I would love to have lunch with you, and it can't be at my house. Where would you like to meet? That's a boundary.
This is like the most beautiful example of boundaries and boundary setting. So thank you so much for all the examples as well, because you're right. It is, I feel like this like it's the term of the century right now, just like authenticity is. And we're getting away from the core meaning of it because now everybody's wanting to use it. But you're right, it's very important for you to know that if you are setting something but then you are mad at the other person, then you didn't set something that was just for you. It's to protect you. It's so you can step away, not so that you can control the entire situation. And I think that is definitely something what we are getting confused with boundaries is boundaries means that I control it. This is what's supposed to do. And that means that you are supposed to adhere to it. And it's like, no, 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 no. It's to create peace for yourself
It's an
because
invitation for the other person to show up differently. And
mhm,
if they say no, thank you, you are responsible to follow through. So if you can't follow through, you shouldn't set the boundary. You're not ready
yeah,
yet.
yeah. I think this is beautiful. And I love this too because again, this is amazing when it comes to those that are in a hard position, whether it's your children, your spouse, whatever the case may be, to where, like you said, you can still love them and you get to kind of protect yourself as well, because otherwise you do find yourself in an entanglement of emotions and you're being pulled in 50 different directions. Now you're not sure which one is actually real, which one you should be focused on. And it causes more chaos for that person, which means ultimately now we can't be there for the other one to help them because we are now in their chaos at the same time, which is no good for anyone.
Yeah, and we hear that all the time. Like, you're making this really difficult for me to love you. And it's like, oh, they're not easy. But what are you not doing so that you can love them? And that love might not be as close as you wish it were. It might need to be a little bit further away. But you can still love them as opposed to all or nothing.
hmm And I think that it's important that people realize, especially in these situations, but in their lives in general, that this also means that you have to do some of your own self-work. in order to have the capacity for this, right? One of the things that I had to learn, which I was not even aware of when I came out of my relationship, is I feel that one of the reasons why I stayed, because I was also trying to fix constantly, which ended up meaning that I was very codependent for
Mm,
that person. And that was a really new term for me when I first learned about it. And I was like, I am so independent. And then when I started reading the book, Codependency No More, which pulls in so many examples from addiction to mental disorders and all the things, there was a way that I was able to connect in those people's examples that I was like, oh my gosh, I did do that. I didn't realize that's why I was doing it, but I did that. And I think that that's something that we need to realize because had I been more self-aware, had I known a little bit more of my own strengths and weaknesses, had I been able to set boundaries, that relationship would have ended a lot earlier
mm.
than the 10 years that it did. And I think that that's something that we find ourselves stuck in is we spiral because we're trying to love for the other, but we haven't figured out who we are and our core values and how we want to handle things or not handle things. And then it leads into all these other different components.
Yeah, you're attaching your own self-worth, self-esteem, just self-image on somebody else's success or failure. And parents, the what most well-meaning parents get into that. I mean, I hear it all the time. I have got a son who's in college. He's a junior this year, and I know that there's others that the crazy parent page that's like on Facebook is like, wow, okay. But we're going to college. We're our professor. I'm like, you're not in there. Like, what are you talking about? R, it's not R, it's theirs. But like this like overstepping of like where do they stop and where do I start? Um,
Mm,
that's again just some societal roles and patterns, particularly with moms, that are given like you're a good mom if you're giving all of yourself. And that's not true. That's not a true statement. And I kind of call BS on that. And maybe, I don't know, maybe some people would say that I'm not as caring of a mom, and I might be less sweet, but I'm far more loving. Because I allow my children to have their experience. Is it always easy? No. But I don't take on their successes nor their failures. And actually, I caution people against the word proud. I don't use it. It's not in my vocabulary. And I caution people that I work with to not use that word because a lot of times I'll hear, I'm so proud of you for going through this program or for doing these things. And I'm like, you're actually taking ownership when you say that. Your self-esteem is being fed by the work that they're doing. And if you don't want to own their slip ups, you better not own their successes. I don't
ooh,
slip ups. So I'm not going to take ownership for the successes. So you might say something instead, man, it's really amazing to watch you stepping into this new process or this new discovery, right? Like you're giving them all ownership of the action. And then when or if you have to say, wow, I'm sorry that didn't work out for you, or I'm sorry that you're struggling, you're also not taking that on, which is kind of the codependency model that you're talking about, which is if you're not doing well, I must not be working hard enough or trying hard enough,
mm.
loving you hard enough, or I need you to do better so that I'm okay.
Ooh, that is a really interesting perspective. I've never heard it that way, especially with using the word proud, because, I feel like that's kind of a thing that a lot of people say is
Yeah.
like, tell them that you're proud of them, give them that validation. But that's really interesting in regards to, especially as a parent, what you're taking ownership of. Like now
Yeah.
my brain is reeling and I'm like, do I say that? Do I mean it that way? Anyway, I will digress later. I'm gonna have to think on this one.
I'm
But
like
that
a
that's
word person. Like I'm very into the exact word, the semantics. They actually do matter. They really
they
matter, especially
do.
talking about someone who's not doing well, because their head will take it and spin it all kinds of
Yeah.
directions. Mhm.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. And I mean, if you look at, NLP, neuro linguistic programming, for anyone that's not familiar with that term, that's all that that talks about is the way that you use words and how it makes a difference in how you think, how you feel, your perspective. But I've never thought of it in regards to on that side, especially with that word. So that's really interesting. And you're so right. Like that was such an amazing sentence of, if you're going to own their proud, you have to also own their failures. So if you're not willing to own those or you're trying to separate yourself, right, then you can't own the other things that they're doing well as well. And what's really interesting about that is
It
it
also
made me
like really
think,
creates that transactional relationship.
mm,
I need to do something to be loved by you or to feel appreciated by you.
okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I can agree with that because I know that like when my oldest one, um, started going through some things, I did kind of go through that phase of like, oh my gosh, he's making these decisions because of me. Is it because we did this? Is it because of what he saw? And I actually had to get to the point to where when we would have conversations and we would talk about certain things, I would have to repeat out loud to him, whatever decision you decide to make, that decision is on you. That decision does not have anything to do with me. And so when we would go through things, I would say, look, I can give you options on what I think you might need to do or what might be better options. But whatever decision that you make, that is your decision and you have to be the one to own that. I don't own that anymore. And it took me saying that for a couple of years, especially, around like 16, 17, where you're like, you just want them to do better and you want them to be better than you. And you do it from a space of love. And at the same time, you're also kind of trying to correct what you feel like you have screwed up or failed at so you can be proud of yourself because here we go, here's what I see. And that's a really hard thing, especially for a parent to like really separate ourselves from because we're taught to parent,
Mhm.
we're not taught to coach our children. And that was something that I had to learn to shift was I can parent them right up to a certain age.
Yes.
Don't touch this, don't do that, that's going to hurt you, and things like that. And then it gets to a point where you have to take a step back and give them the perspectives and say, okay, well, here are your choices,
Mhm.
but then let them take hold of it so that they can continue to grow in a way where they feel like, okay, I'm the one that made that choice. So now I know I have to do better versus, well, she's pissed at me because I made this decision, but I thought it was the right decision, but now I'm completely conflicted.
Mhm. Yep. Oh, it's hard.
Ugh, it is so hard.
And then add scary behavior, right? Or add scary consequences.
hmm
Like it's one thing to let your kid get kicked off a team, which is bad. Most of us don't like that, or fail a class or, not get into something. It's another thing when it's like this could impact their whole life, like figuratively and literally.
Yeah, big difference.
Mhm.
And I think that was one thing I had to really be aware of was not living through my kids' experiences. So trying to make mine better, or I missed out on this, so you have to do this because I wanted to experience it, so you should experience. And that was one thing that I tried to be really, really aware of when certain things happened. Especially like sports and stuff like that. Okay, you're not interested anymore? All right, well then let's do something else. What do you want to try? Versus, well, I did this and I did this for so many years and I was the best of it, and that's what you should be doing. And that again, that's a really interesting and hard place to be because we have to separate our experiences and our failures and not put them on our kids. And at the same time, be okay that they decided to do something different, and not hold it over our heads for that. So, oh, Lisa, we could talk about this for like hours. We could go down so many rabbit holes. We might have to have you back for a part two. So what I do want you to do is definitely, tell everybody where they can find you, how they can follow you. I know you have a book that's coming out. So for anyone that's looking for additional information, fill everybody in.
Yeah, super excited about a book that is published date is September 9th. And it's called Parallel Recovery, a guide for those who love someone with substance use disorder. And it is specific for substance use disorder, but it really is expansive in the specifics of the book are talking about addiction, but the concepts in the books are expansive. I have a TED Talk, The Power of Parallel Recovery. You can Google that. It comes up. You can find me on Instagram at parallel_recovery. And my website is lisakatonesmith.com.
Yes, thank you so much. And of course, we'll have all that information in the show notes. We already have the link to the book. So as soon as this goes live, it'll drop and you guys will be able to go and purchase it. We're also going to include her YouTube for her TED Talk so that you guys can take a listen to that as well. Lisa, do you have any closing thoughts, any final words for the audience?
Thanks, Kat, for giving me space to be able to talk about this. I think it's really important to I sort of say to people, I wear some sandwich boards so that they don't have to step forward and say, hey, look, 1 in 12 people in this country are affected, could be diagnosed with substance use disorder, diagnostically. And that means every single household is connected to somebody who's struggling. And if we don't start talking about this, the numbers of people struggling and the deaths that can be prevented are not going to go the right direction. So thank you for giving me just space to be able to talk and open up, and help people understand that even if somebody in their life isn't struggling specifically with substance use or at a catastrophic level, that there's ways to start changing engagement with the person you love and making an impact.
Oh, you're so welcome. I love this conversation, and I 1000% agree with you. I think that we need to be having more conversations like this so that we can start helping people instead of hiding behind it, pretending it's not happening. And so many people end up suffering alone on so many different levels because they feel like they will be shamed for having the conversation. This is life. This is part of the human experience. Shit happens. We're just, it is what it is, right? And there is a beautiful way to, like you said, honor what someone is going through, be there for them. And if they decide to make that shift, you then get to see where that journey gets to go. And I think that that is definitely something we need to learn to be more comfortable with. And that is in that space of discomfort because everyone has their own journey, but it doesn't mean that they have to be on that journey alone.
Yes.
Well,
Perfect.
thank you so much. Oh, I am so excited by this. You guys, please take this to heart. Think about this for a little bit. Make sure you go and find Lisa's book. Make sure that you go to listen to her TED Talk. These are the conversations that we need to be having. No one here on this freaking planet is perfect. No one here on this planet has never had bad days or crappy days, or, we all go through something. That's part of the human experience. And I think that it is time that we start honoring those experiences versus judging and shaming people for whatever reason it is that they went through something. Whether we agree with it or not, like Lisa said, it is part of them. It's something that they go through, and there is a way to love lovingly in a space where you are creating your own boundaries and holding your own space and helping them at the same time. The ultimate thing is remembering that we all individually have to make the decision of the path that we are going to take forward, and nobody else can push us in that direction. So I hope you guys got some amazing insights from this. And until next time, do one thing positive for someone each and every day and see the difference that it makes in your life. Catch you later. Thank you so much for tuning in to Real Chat with Kat today, where real stories meet real solutions. If you loved today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review on Apple, and share this with someone who may also need to hear this as well. Let's also keep the conversation going. Follow me on socials at The Lotus Effect, connect with our incredible guests, and remember, you are never alone. Your story matters, and you have the ability and the power to rewrite it. You always have a choice. Until next time, stay strong, stay inspired, and keep showing up as the incredible, unstoppable